Hey everyone, this is Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the conversation series where I sit down with other writers and we just shoot the shit for a while. Never know what we're going to talk about. Usually I talk about the life and times of that writer. What's their journey been like? How did they get to become a writer? What does it feel like to be a writer now? And through that, we kind of pick through advice that they would give to aspiring writers, some of their own mistakes that they made that they would love to have avoided, all that good stuff. We rarely talk about their works in particular. Sometimes we'll delve into it a little bit. And that's, people who've been listening to this podcast for a while know that, what happens is typically I'll get pitched a guest. Usually that guest has a book coming out, and I'll have them on, but we typically don't spend a lot of time talking about the book because I'm more interested in talking about them as a writer and not necessarily the author of a particular work. And once in a while I have repeat guests, not that often. Because you think, well, if you've discussed the journey of a writer with them and they come back on, what are you going to talk about? Well, folks, I can always find shit to talk about. And there are several guests I've had on a couple times, and I do it because they're great guests and they're entertaining. They've got a lot of good things to say, and I just enjoy talking to them. Such is the case with this week's guest. I had on for the second time, Mr. Brad Parks. Brad is an internationally best-selling novelist. His 12th novel is coming out, and it's beautiful. It's called The Boundaries We Cross, and it's coming out November 5th, so it will be out when this podcast airs. And we did spend time talking about the boundaries we cross. And it was interesting, especially, hearing about where he got the idea for the book, which was more like, rather than having the idea for a book, I think he had the feeling of what that book should be, based on something that happened in his own personal life. And he was able to find a story to write that best expressed that feeling that he was trying to convey. But we talked about that. We talked about kind of his, we recapped his publication journey, talking about the different publishers that he's spent time with. And that was kind of an interesting conversation, part of the conversation, because I've been with several publishers as well. Obviously writing process. And I think we kind of agreed, like, the best thing writers can do at our age, when it's just like we're just churning out books and we don't know what's going to happen to them, is write and hope. We decided that was kind of the motto that writers should just kind of live with. But it was great, and we made up a fantastic little story at the end based on a sentence from a Larry McMurtry novel. So good times had all around. Brad Parks, great conversationalist. You're going to like this. For the second time on the show, this is my conversation with Brad Parks.
You're looking good for a middle-aged man with a beard.
As are you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
You seem to be in like a chasm or a void or something like that.
Well, so we have a it's actually like a very like 1960s kind of, well, the polite way to say it now is mid-century modern, right? Like that's like the like makes it sound like that kicks it up like 10% in the value, right? If you say it's mid-century modern,
right?
But really it's like a 60s like dark panel, and that's just somehow my office background right now.
A very Brady Bunch of you.
Mike and Carol are in the other room.
How you been, man?
Not bad. How about you?
Just figuring it out still.
Oh,
and you've got a new book coming out.
I do.
I was just looking at your website. So I keep trying to catch up to your number of books, and I can't. So this is like number like 12 or 13 or something.
Oh, yeah, the Dirty Dozen. It's crazy how that happens. It sneaks up on you. Like, I don't know about you, but like when you start, you think like, I mean, just the first book, right? Like the first book feels like it's this massive achievement and like all the first and everything like that. And then you do it all over again. And again, it blows your mind. And then like, I never, like, I couldn't even imagine anything beyond double digits, Like
Totally.
that was just such a like it, you would see these older authors, and yes, I guess I'm now an older author as I'm looking at my hairline, right? Like, and yeah, they'd have like 15 novels, 20 novels, and you'd be like, that's not even real, right? How is that even possible?
Right, right. You have to have 10 lifetimes to do that. And then it just becomes your work. And, I guess if you think about the number of emails you send over the course of a year, it's easily equal to a novel. So it's just a matter of doing it every day. But it is weird because you do kind of start to forget. Like I was looking at your list. I'm like, okay, he's got like 12 or 13. And I'm like, okay, my 10th is about to come out.
Oh wow, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. And then I'm about halfway through something. I'm like, oh yeah, but I also wrote this other thing. I forgot about it. That's on submission right now. So I'm like, because I don't know how long does it take you now? Like less than a year, obviously.
Yeah, less than a year, although it can, and I do some ghostwriting, so that can
Oh,
kind of
got it.
get in the way for sure. But it's really still all over the map. I feel like, like so for a draft, it's usually about 3 to 4 months.
That's fast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fast, but that's just a draft. And I
Right.
think I've finally learned that, I'm a journalist at heart. So, you always try to make the first draft clean because
Right.
in the journalism game, you only had one draft, right? But
Right.
I think I've learned. By the way, I'm allowed to swear lightly on this
Whatever the
podcast.
fuck you want, man.
Yeah. All right. So I think I used to think that I was actually this like pristine first drafter,
Yeah.
and really I'm a shitty first drafter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
As it
like
should be.
as it should be, but I think I thought I was different because I was a journalist and I only had one draft and I got used to
Right.
that. But truly I'm a shitty first drafter. So that 3 to 4 months might like I've actually spent longer in editing at times than I have for like so this book, the one that comes out very well.
Boundaries we
But
cross.
by the
Yep.
time you post this, it will be out. The boundaries we cross. Yeah, I did the normal 3 to 4 months and then, you know, then the rewrites commence.
Right. Right.
And I did some stupid rewrites on this one. Yeah, have you ever like done this where you talk yourself into like I think there were two different ones. Like I changed one of the voices for the characters where like I switched it from first to third and then back to first.
Oh,
Which is
that's a lot of
why.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work and it's dumb. And why
Yeah.
I can't even remember why. And then like I also like changed it into present tense. It's
Yeah.
like because I wanted there to be a because there's basically two voices in this. And the story, just so and
Yeah.
listeners know,
Please.
it features Charles Bliss, who is a teacher at a well-to-do boarding school in Connecticut, who is accused of having an inappropriate relationship with one of his students.
Mhm.
Now, he denies this accusation vehemently. It still looks like he's going to get fired, and then the student disappears. And
Mhm.
that's really the mystery. Where has she gone? What's happening? He is, of course, immediately fingered as the lead suspect. Is that he must have made her disappear? He must have kidnapped her, killed her. And he's saying I didn't, and yet there's evidence that suggests that maybe he did. And but part of the deal with this is it goes back and forth between Charles in a timeline that starts in January of the school
Uh-huh.
year and Haley, who's the young woman in question. And that timeline is like her journal. Yeah, I'm ripping off from Gone Girl. What do you want? Her journal, which starts before the action of the book. So that
Right.
action is like starts when the school year begins in
Right.
September. So it's going
Right.
back and forth between Charles and Haley, Charles and Haley. And I wanted there to be some more contrast between the two. I didn't want them both to be in first person past tense. So I turned this into present tense, the Charles part, just so it would like to the reader, it would be clear that, oh, okay, now I'm with Charles
Right.
versus now I'm with Haley. But you do stupid stuff like that, and it's like it's a month of your life,
Oh
going
yeah.
through
My
every
last
single
book that
page.
came out, I changed the entire book from I almost always write first person present, one point of view.
Sure.
And I doubted myself and I wrote third person past and it just didn't work. And so I did the entire book. And you're sitting there thinking like, do I just start with the blank screen and my manuscript next to me?
Right.
Because the amount of because as you know, when you're doing those changes, it's not just the verb tense, right?
Right,
The voice
right.
completely changes when you're doing
And
that.
it's a mindset too. My gosh, yeah.
Totally. But I see what you're doing also because it is interesting with, so what I'm writing now is two POVs, both first person present tense. And what is difficult is like, does this just sound like the same voice?
Yeah.
Because that's really, I think it's really hard. And I'm in awe of people who, without being gimmicky with intonations
with
and
language or something like that.
yeah, that they sound so distinctive. And in your book, you have what I'm assuming is what 17, 18-year-old girl.
Right.
That's a huge contrast in voice, and that's hard to do, right? When you're
Right.
doing when you're capturing a voice like that, is like
Well, and you want to be,
how would
because
this
you
person?
don't want to like fall into the trap, right? Of getting all kind of cutesy and
Right,
let me find some lingo that, I mean, I do have teenagers. I'm a dad, so that does help. I
right,
have it
but
in the
that's more
house.
organic because
Yeah.
you're absorbing that.
But you realize like, so I mean, this sounds creepy, but like, I started listening really carefully to teenagers talking.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and not my teenagers, because that's like that's too like I already know them and whatnot, but
Right.
like kind of like eavesdropping. So I would be around. So my wife also works at a school, so I would just kind of be sitting at a school, and this is a place that I'm it's perfectly acceptable for me to be hanging out there. So it's not quite as weird as it sounds, but it's still a little weird because I'm and like what actually really struck me is they sound more like us than we realize
Yeah.
you know like, so you actually don't have to go way over the top with some of the current jargon. You just make it sound ridiculous when you do that, right?
Right.
But like that actually the biggest difference is, okay, we're middle-aged men with beards and we've seen everything before, and so we react with a little more calm to things,
Right. Right.
versus for them so much of what they're seeing is, this is the first time I've ever seen this,
Oh, that's
oh
a
my
good
god,
point.
and there's like there's that energy and that hysteria and that like,
Right.
is there happy
Yeah.
kind of a
Right.
thing. And so like that was the kind of stuff that I had to really hone in on and concentrate on. So I don't know about you,
Right.
but like
Trying to remember you at that age, what was I like, because the same
well,
applies.
I was a complete moron, but I don't know about you, but
Nobody would
uh,
want to read about me.
yeah,
Uh,
but I do the read the stuff out loud, because that's it
yeah.
really makes a difference.
I was just having that
Here's the
conversation. I have never done that for an entire novel. I've done that for chapters. I've done that for short fiction. It's fucking hard, man. Like, as you're doing it, like if I'm preparing for a reading and they say you've got 5 minutes, I take a section and I cross things out to make it last 5 minutes. And inevitably I'm always like, I should have written it like this. It's better like this. But then you read it out and you totally capture things. And so it's a worthy thing to do. But when you're talking about a manuscript, you're talking about an 8 to 10 hour journey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it takes a while, but what the heck? What better do I have to do? But it also it leads to some fun things, because like I had so for the audio edition, my narrator actually contacted me and said,
Oh,
tell me about this character, and how do you think this character sounds? And he's the lawyer. So my protagonist Charles Bliss is in obviously a world of legal trouble along with everything else, and so he has this lawyer whose name is Jerry Cardova, and he wanted to, and the narrator wanted to know, well, what does Jerry Cardova sound like? And I could just immediately launch into, well, Jerry Cordova is from the
yeah.
Bronx, and he grew up on 133rd Street, and
No
he actually,
nonsense.
yeah, he because that's how he sounded in my head, and because I had read it out loud, I knew that Jerry Cordova was the kind of guy who says, "Look, you can't trust cops. Okay, cops are just assholes with badges, nothing more." And like and being able to kind of bring that to life, and then he did the voice, and he made it actually sound much better
So
than me
when
being a
you're
professional.
crafting these characters, do you see them totally fully fleshed? Do you
Yeah,
have like you can describe them to a T,
yeah.
whether or not you do it in the book?
Yeah, I need that, man. Like it's the movie in my head. Do you get that too, or not so much?
The weird thing for me is I'm very cinematic when I write, and that helps because I don't outline, but I can just visualize everything happening. But my main character is usually not somebody who's I see fully formed. They're just this
Mm,
apparition.
Right.
And I almost never describe them, so you don't know what they look like, which I kind of like doing anyway, because then the reader can
Sure.
do whatever they want with them. But it depends on the book. But sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what this person looks like. I have a general sense of their size and level of fitness. That's always something I'm concerned with, is like,
Sure.
can they protect
Can they
themselves?
climb that hill? Can they? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can they
Sure.
throw a punch? But yeah, I never know, like, do they have freckles on their face? You know,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
that's actually, I mean, if you write a lot in first person, and I've done a fair number, probably more first person than I have third. Like who in their first person ever
Describes himself.
says, like, and I looked at my prominent nose
Right.
in profile and thought to myself, it appears like a gentle ski slope, or like
Totally.
nobody says
And you
that
want
kind
to
of thing.
avoid any time where the character's like looking in the mirror. I had
Oh,
one time I had a character describe himself because he was looking in toilet water as he was throwing up and he saw his reflection. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do that.
yeah. I'll give you that. Like that's unusual enough for like, yeah, when the character is like, hung over and staring at themselves in the mirror, going, "Oh my
Right.
God,"
Right.
and
If they're going to
deciding how
describe
bloodshot
themselves, you
their
don't
eyes
want them to look good.
are. Yeah, yeah.
But I
Good.
do think it's over, and I think you're right. Maybe it is that first person kind of a thing, but I just don't describe in general very much because I don't like
Yeah,
to. Like it's work, and it's like I don't know, like I don't know the name of that kind of bush, like I don't,
yeah,
or that tree. So and it slows things down, and if you can describe things like with one or two words
right,
that you can distill it, right? Like you're reducing, like when you're cooking, you're making it more potent by saying, I'm going to use this verb
right,
to describe this, and that's all you need to know.
right.
um
Well, and I think that's what our readers are looking for, right? They
I
they
think
want
so.
that propulsive story. They want like they don't want us spending 3 paragraphs on what that manzanita bush looks like,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like,
Or
and
the
it
fact
and
that
it
it's even in a
blossoms in
manzanita bush.
spring. And yeah, yeah. I mean, like so. Yeah, I think we're in the right spot
Yeah,
for that.
it has to lend. I always think like descriptions need, like at the beginning of a chapter, sometimes if somebody's walking outside, I need the atmosphere. If the atmosphere is contributing to the overall theme and
Right,
tone and mood of
right.
the book. So I tend to write a lot of rain, a lot of snow, a lot of gunmetal clouds, all those kinds of things. But that's all you need is a quick little, like, the air put a stranglehold on me or whatever it
Right.
is.
Well, I mean, because there are some times when you're trying to kind of make the weather a little bit of a character. Like I'm writing a book right now that has some scenes set in a desert where
Oh,
look, it's
interesting.
115 degrees,
Right.
and like you feel that, and that becomes also a thing of like we can't run this machine that much more because it's going to overheat, and it becomes
Right.
kind of a plot element.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, those are the exceptions to the Elmore Leonard no weather rule, right?
Yeah, if it's yeah, that's a good point. And I try not to even think about rules because most rules are lame. But like, yeah, what I'm writing right now, I think the whole book, I don't know yet. I'm about halfway through, is going to take place over the course of 6 hours. It's just that.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's in a room and there's a snowstorm outside, like 2 feet of snow, kind of a
Right,
snowstorm. And so that weather is prohibiting movement.
sure.
So it's important to kind of keep coming back to, but you have to be careful that you're not just beating it to death because people are like, we get
Yeah,
it. There's no.
I've never tried to do a book that condensed a time span. Like I've always wanted to. Like that always sounded
I
cool to
never
me.
have
But
my.
it all ultimately came down to it. It's still going to be a week or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, usually 2 weeks is kind of my thing, and you don't want it to be too long. But it's scary because I have this idea, which is a very loose idea, and I just start writing, and then, you get 20,000 words, and you're like, is there enough here for an 85,000 word draft? And I'm like, I don't know. But then you start to realize, like, I need to go into their backstory a little bit. So then, and I never just have backstory. What I do is then I shift it to first person present tense 4 years earlier, this scene that kind of informs this character. And then you start realizing, okay, I have other pieces of time that I can play with,
Right.
but you got to be careful with that too, because you don't want to spend too much time there because
Right.
people want to see what's happening in that room. So I don't know, but and you lose all context for it. Like, I don't know. This is either great or it's terrible or somewhere in between. I need somebody else to eventually tell me that, and that's probably going to be my agent.
Right. or, or yes, or when no publishing company wants to publish it, then
Right.
actually this was a mistake. But when you think about it, a typical reading experience takes you about 6 hours to read a book, 6 8 hours, something like that.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I
uh,
know. I
good
know.
work, good
We'll
work.
see. We'll see. I just write what seems interesting to me, and then I hope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't have multiple book deals. Like, I like
Right,
write a book and I'm like, hey, I
right,
got
and
this.
hope.
I've been with the same publisher for the last six of my books, so they've been great to me, but you never know. They might just be like, no, we're done with you.
Yeah, no, but you've given me a new motto: just write and hope. There it
Right.
is.
Well, and
Very
and I know you've been with a couple different publishers at least, but you're with
Yeah,
Ocean.
I've been around, man. Like again, like this is why I had
I've been
books all
around
over.
too. Yeah. I mean, because I
Uh,
was with Ocean View for a while, who are great, and I was thinking about them the other day with the hurricane. So, I hope that they're okay down there in Florida from a month
well,
ago.
so I'm with Ocean View now.
Yeah,
So
I
in
know.
fact,
Yeah.
yeah, I can tell you we had a launch meeting just last week. They seem to be doing fine. So yes, all is well in the
Good.
Ocean View universe.
Yeah, yeah, they're great folks for sure. So, and then you used to be, and I know you have at least a couple books with Thomas and Mercer, right?
Yeah, so the full the scope of it, I had a series, a 6 book series that was with Minotaur at St. Martin's Press. And then I did 3 standalones with Dutton, part of Penguin Random House. And then I went to Thomas and Mercer and tried the Amazon experience for a little while. And now I'm at Ocean View. So yeah,
Okay.
I've been
What
around.
was, I'm trying to think about how to.
Go ahead, Carter. Come on, we're friends. It's all right.
Well, I'm just always curious because, because I've been with multiple publishers as well. I've never been with Amazon. But you've different experiences with different publishers. And I would say, all of my experiences have been good to great. I've never had a shitty publisher. I've had a publisher that's gone out of business. I've had a publisher who wanted to buy my next book, but I didn't sell well enough with my previous book for them, so they passed. So again, they weren't shitty. That's just you. That's when I learned about, oh, this is a business.
They are in business, yes.
But it's funny. Like, I look at, what I do is right before I talk to somebody, I'm always looking at their website, their Amazon page, whatever. And you look at, so I'll use you as an example. 12 books, you start scrolling down, several hundred reviews for each, which is great. And all of a sudden there's like thousands of reviews. And I'm like,
Right.
I will bet you that's an Amazon title. And sure enough, it is.
Amazon title that
But
was
you
an
think like
Amazon first read selection at that.
that, which is
So
amazing. Yeah. So you get a
right.
first read selection, which my understanding, my ignorant understanding is it's obviously incredible exposure, perhaps not a lot of money attached to it because that's usually free, those for Amazon readers, but it's amazing exposure. So like when you look back at your kind of career with different publishers, I mean, how would you rate Amazon as a publisher? I've heard varying different things about them, mostly positive. But
Yeah,
I'm
well,
just
see,
always curious because it's
sure.
such a different vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, I think like every publisher is both wonderful and shitty, honestly.
Mhm.
It kind of depends on your experience there. I mean, if you ask Bob Dugoni, like, what's your Amazon experience? I mean, his eyes get as big as saucers, and he points to all the plaques he has on his office for, I've sold 10 billion books and everything like
Right.
that. That wasn't my Amazon experience.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I was in Amazon first reads, and so all these reviews and everything like that. Basically, I gave away 180,000 books. I'm not sure if I got a lot out of that sales wise.
Yeah.
Sales wise, that book didn't end up doing well.
Yeah.
So I think, and the other thing about Amazon is like it sort of reinvents itself as a publisher about every 18 months. They just decide to change everything and everything about how they do. So even
Interesting.
down to what era were you at Amazon could define how. So
Oh,
like, for
interesting.
example, um, before I was in Amazon First Reads was a cheat code. It was a brilliant thing because of the way the algorithm counted those books. There was a long time where the algorithm counted those as sales, right? It did not distinguish a first reads download from any other type of download. And so
Oh,
it made it appear to the algorithm that your book had just sold 180,000 or 200,000 copies in a month. And that's like runaway bestseller category. I mean, that's like
yeah,
Reese's
that's
book,
an insane number of
book
books.
club. That's like, wow, that's major, major, major. And so it would then treat that book as if it was that meteoric book. And of course, the algorithm would then put it everywhere and yada, yada. Well, at some point, the algorithm stopped treating those as sales. And so those Amazon first read books just suddenly, literally, the day they came out, you would watch their ranking just go, and then and like
Yeah.
greater. And I was in that epic, and I don't even know if they've solved that or what. But so, and part of the dirty little secret of Amazon publishing is they actually don't understand the algorithm any better than anybody else does.
Oh God.
Like it's proprietary
Cyberdyne.
even from them. Like they are not allowed to know. They are not told. And Amazon, of course, also has this company-wide policy of they are agnostic when it comes to the supplier, which all sounds good when you're buying toasters or hand towels or whatever. But when you're their author and you see them treating other companies' books better than they're treating your book, you're like, guys, what the hell? What, like, I'm on your
Yeah.
team. Why aren't you, so like, and it like little things like, okay, so you're a Kindle Daily Deal. Like, awesome, Kindle Daily Deal. I'm going to sell a lot, right? And then you look, the day comes and there are 99 Kindle Daily Deals. And this actually happened to me at Amazon. There were 99 Kindle Daily Deals, and I was ranked 99 out of 99. Like you had to scroll through all previous 98 books to reach mine. And and you're going through like, cookbooks published by Simon and Schuster that had 3.8-star ratings, and like children's books from like, who is this? Like all this random stuff, and you're like, guys, your own book ends up being in last place, and they just shrug and they go, that's the algorithm. We have no control. So it's a very different kind of experience. And it can be all over the map. I've also had publishing, so like I said, my first publisher was, the series had been with them, and I was looking to move to standalone. So it was kind of a natural break. I was with Dutton for a while, loved being with Dutton, but then my editor left. Or actually both of the editors who acquired me had left. And it just, kind of like the new folks just kind of didn't want to work with me. So I mean, you just, we're all, what did you just say? Right and hope? That's where we are.
Right and hope. So what was that decision from, you were saying you kind of you wanted to get into standalones? Is that, I mean, clearly I understand that's where you are now, certainly with the boundaries recrossed, but is this just like, this is what I enjoy more?
I would go back to a series if something struck me. They have advantages and disadvantages. Honestly, there is something really fun about dipping back into a world well. And I certainly enjoyed that. And of course, readers get really invested in characters and their arcs and their stories, and that's a lot of fun too. On the flip side, I always like in a standalone, no one's safe, right?
Right.
So
you can do whatever you want to do.
You can do whatever you want. And in a series, there's always that thing like, so my protagonist was named Carter, if you may remember that. So Carter Ross, this, white guy and whatever. And like, I think the reader always knew that no matter what trouble I put Carter in, wasn't going to kill him. Right. Like he could just be like, oh, well, stand around me like, boy, this really sucks for that like minor character over there, because they ain't going to make it, but I'll be fine. And versus in a standalone, I mean, yes, I've killed everybody in a standalone,
Right.
And so
totally.
I like that kind of feeling of like anything could happen, and you really truly
and you can go anywhere you want. You can be, I have a lot of mine are set. I only have standalones, and so a good number of mine are set in New England. But then, this one is in Colorado, and I had one in Seattle, and it's just, you never know where let's explore a new place with new characters. And that's, to me, that's, and you can still, I always have Easter eggs. There's, somebody might have gone to school at a college that was featured in a book 4 books ago, a fictitious college, and they'll just have a throwaway line. So I'll always have this little world building thing. but yeah, no one's safe. I've killed off pretty major characters like halfway through just because that day it struck me what would happen. Like,
Right.
what would
Right.
that mean? And you don't know if you're going to do it. So you try it and you're like, oh, this actually totally opens up the story.
Right.
So I love that kind of feeling. Do you remember, people, and the typical writer question, but it's always interesting to me when people ask it to me, but do you remember when you came up with the idea for The Boundaries We Cross? Was it just a
Yeah.
sense, or was it like, holy shit, this just came to me, I'm going to write this 3 months down the line when I'm done with what I'm working on?
Yeah, so it actually it grew out of something that happened right at the beginning of the pandemic. And
Hmm.
by the way, this is not a pandemic book. I don't think the word COVID does not appear in these
Yeah.
pages, just to be clear. So, but and it had nothing to do with the pandemic. But if you remember that first week of the pandemic, I call it week zero
Yeah.
because like at the start of the
March
week,
13th.
like yes, yeah. Well, so, but the that Monday was like March 8th or March 9th, whatever it
Right.
was. And COVID was still like we were calling it the coronavirus, and it was this
Right.
thing that was happening on Italian cruise ships, and it was literally, I looked it up, it was buried on page A8 of the New York Times, right? So this is not front page news, this is not changing our lives. On that Monday, someone I love accused me of doing something terrible that I knew I hadn't done,
Hmm.
but I couldn't prove it to them, right? And it was like it was the classic, like the innocent person sometimes has the hardest time proving their innocence because they weren't there, they didn't do it. It's like if you've ever listened to the Serial podcast, why could Adnan not tell you what he was doing on January 13th at 2 p.m., because to him
Right.
January 13th was just another day, it was nothing. So
Right.
anyway, so I was accused of doing this terrible kind of awful thing, and but I'm like, but I didn't.
Hmm.
And that wasn't, and so it really, for this brief period of time, it kind of destroyed the relationship.
Hmm.
And it was awful. It was really, really, like, because I knew I hadn't done it. I mean, let's be clear, and I know I'm being vague, but like if I had done it, it would have been bad, right? Not quite Adnan murder serial bad, but still like
Right. Yeah.
destructive to the relationship. Let's put it that way.
Right. Right.
And I just couldn't prove it. And about a week later, the person came across some kind of new information and realized I hadn't done it, and they had accused me wrongly. And they said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "That's okay." And we moved on, and it was no big deal. But that week was just this awful, awful feeling. And
Hmm.
so I kind of, when I was coming up for air, whenever I started writing The Boundaries We Cross, you're always kind of dredging through your memory banks of like, what are those, what's been a really vivid feeling I've been having lately? And that just came to me, of like that
Hmm.
terrible, terrible feeling of being wrongly accused. So I wanted to start off Charles Bliss with, this teacher, this nice guy, being accused of having, I mean, what well, there are worse things to be accused of, barely, but if you're a teacher, what's a worse thing to be accused of than you were having an inappropriate relationship with a student? and
Right.
and having him be like, but I, and especially in this day and age with Me
Right.
Too and with everything else, we go, hey,
And I'm just
sorry,
curious,
sorry.
in the case of your book, is the student a minor as well?
Well, so actually, speaking of New England, I set this in Connecticut, which of all places, believe it or not, the age of consent in Connecticut is 17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
So
that's why
that,
the teacher wanted to teach there.
yeah. So that part of it is not, which actually was good because that would take you down a completely different road legally, and suddenly you have a character
Yeah.
being arrested, and so no, it was basically, again, it's set in an elite boarding school, and they say, okay, you've had this relationship, it's not illegal, so we do not have to report this to the authorities, but leave campus, your ass is fired, you're not coming
Well, it's
back.
against school policy for sure, at the minimum.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
we can't have this. And of course, the young woman in question is from a very prominent Connecticut family. Her grandfather is the former governor. Her mother
Oh,
is this
wow.
prominent
Right.
state senator. They're very
Right.
wealthy, and so it's like basically we are not going to cross this family. So we don't care whether you did it or not. The accusation is enough. Get out of here.
Right.
Um,
So, and losing your job is one thing, losing your reputation is the broader umbrella,
Right.
right?
Well, so that's actually part of this being set in the boarding school world. My wife has worked at boarding schools for 20 years now, so I know the boarding school world well. And there is this awful, awful thing in boarding schools, Carter, called pass the trash. And it's actually it sort of came out when a number of boarding schools had kind of these scandals about things from the 80s, the 90s, long ago, where teachers were having inappropriate relationships with students, and it would come out, and it would come to the attention of administrators, and what they would do is kind of quietly fire the person, but then give them a good recommendation so that they could go start working at another boarding school. So that's what actually the protagonist in this book is offered, a chance to pass the trash. Basically, they say, look, just go away quietly. You won't say anything. We won't say anything. Because of course, these boarding schools are ultimately worried about protecting their reputation, and they don't want this to become public, that this salacious, terrible thing happened. So, basically the offer is go away with your tail tucked between your tail, between your legs, and you'll live to teach another day, and nobody will say anything. Except Charles is saying, well, but wait, yeah, like,
but I didn't do this.
I didn't do it. And I've been working at this school for 11 years now. Everybody I know and care about works with me. A boarding school is this very intensive lifestyle because the kids never go home. And so you're working all the time. And these people are your friends, your family, they're everything. And like all the people I care about are going to know if I run away, that they'll think I did it. And I can't allow that to happen. So that's the kind of wonderful, untenable situation.
The desperation. And also just, that kind of desperation is always kind of a fascinating plot mechanism, and can extend to even like the judicial system, where somebody's quite literally accused of a crime they didn't commit, but they're looking at a plea deal that is potentially better than would certainly be better than being found guilty, even though they're innocent. And that wrangling, what do I do?
Versus spend 30 years.
Right. And in the case of your professor, like there will be, once that accusation is out there, it doesn't matter if you clear your name, because there will be people, it does matter a little bit, but there will be people who will always associate that character with what happened. And you're just facing this dilemma, which is, that's got to be a very, that must have been kind of a hard thing to write, in the sense of like, I kind of tiptoed into this area for a little bit, and it fucking sucked. But I'm sure you're able to bring some of that emotion to the page.
Right. Well, and I think, the other thing I like about it is like, it's relatable. So I think one of the problems sometimes with our thrillers is, we get our characters into these situations that frankly no normal person has ever been, is that going to happen, like where, the Middle Eastern terrorist is whatever. But like, this was a book that was really, this has happened to everyone, like we've all been accused of something, even something minor, like who ate the last cookie? Wasn't me, like whatever, we've all been accused of something that we didn't do. And we've had that feeling that like, it's like that weird, like guilt, remorse feel, like when I was being accused of the thing, it's like, I knew I hadn't done it, but I still felt guilty. Like, why do I feel guilty? I didn't even do it, but it kind of like brings all, and that's actually, there is some fascinating psychological stuff that happens of, why do innocent people plead guilty to things, or they will confess to crimes they did not commit? Right. That has absolutely happened. So totally. I wrote I was in an anthology, a wonderful anthology a few years back called The Anatomy of Innocence. And it was actually done to support the Loyola College has a Life After Innocence for exonerated inmates. So it was a fundraiser for that. But each chapter was a different inmate who was later exonerated, right? So these were people. So I wrote about a guy who had spent 27 years in jail for a crime he did not commit. And what was shocking is the number of them that had confessed to doing their crime. I mean, like, there were members of the Central Park Five who confessed. You're like, wait, what? Right. So it's a wild thing what the brain goes through when it's been accused of having done something wrong. That's assuming we're not sociopaths.
They're accused, and then having that being repeated, and it just becomes written into your subconscious, right? So you're because how many false memories do we have of like, oh, I'm sure I saw that movie with you. We were there. You were wearing this. Like, no, that wasn't me. But I was so convinced it was you. Like, why? So yeah, you can be convinced of anything over time under the right circumstances, I think.
Right,
So
right.
that's scary. What does it feel like to have your book coming out on Election Day?
Well, everybody's going to be talking about my novel. I'm quite
Yeah,
sure of
yeah,
it.
that's
Now,
going to be headline news. They're going to be out there
it's
with a
given
board with a map showing where everything's selling.
red states and blue states alike, baby. We hope. No, it's kind of giving me a fun little hook to readers to be like, look, what no matter who you're voting for, like this is stressful, and so just shut off the news. By the way, we won't have the result on Tuesday anyway. Who are we kidding? And
Totally.
so just shut yourself away, do yourself a favor, just read a good book instead. So I'm hoping that that's what people will do.
Smart. And then you've got something in the works next.
Always, always. So I can't say a lot about it yet, but yeah, the next book number, that would be number 13. Again, we get back to those numbers getting
Yeah.
awfully large. We couldn't possibly be this old, Carter. I don't know how
No.
this happened.
How long have you been writing for?
So my first book came out when I was 35 and I'm now 50.
Okay. So yeah, I started writing when I was 33, but it took 9 years and 3 books for my first one to come out. And I'm now 54. So it's it's
Yeah.
been a couple decades plus, but you do feel like it gets easier. I think what happens is it becomes the job,
Right.
and you, like any job, you become better at it. And that's never to say it gets easy.
Right.
But I feel like the physical act of sitting down and writing is is easy. When I first started out, it was like, how do fucking
It's not for
sentences
me.
work? Well, I mean, as opposed, like, I don't know how to make a sentence work. Now I'm like, okay, I can write a sentence. I just don't know what I'm writing about.
What sentence should it be? Yeah, yeah. That's that. I think the challenges just change. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like because in some ways it has gotten easier. It hasn't got. I don't even know. I mean, the funny thing when you do this for a living, and this still cracks me up, and maybe you get this too. Like is like you finish a book, and then people say, "Well, what are you going to do next?" As if the answer might be, "Well, now I'm going to master the cello." Like, no,
Right.
I'm going to write another freaking book.
Right.
Like,
This is my
all I've
job.
got. This is
Right.
all I do.
You don't ask a CPA after tax season's over, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
Like, they're going to do it all over again.
Year's taxes. Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. So
Yeah.
we keep rolling along, but
Well,
it's
congrats on the
job.
new model, on the new book. And before we wrap up, we're going to do our storytelling again. If you're up for it a second time,
Okay.
I'm sure we knocked it out of the park last time. I don't quite remember.
Killed it. Yeah, yeah, we were the best. Like I think that's now been optioned and is going to be appearing on screen. So
So just to remind the listener, I've chosen 3 books, mostly at random from my bookshelves. Brad, you're going to choose one of those books. We're going to choose a random sentence from a random page. I'm going to read that sentence, and that'll be the first sentence and maybe a 2 to 3 minute long short story. So I'll read the sentence. You give me the next 1 or 2 sentences, whatever you feel like, and then I'll go. And then when it goes completely off the rails, I will call it a day. We've got Tana French's The Searcher. Lars Kepler's The Mirror Man.
I don't know if I want to do Tana French. Tana French is too good for us to be destroying her. But okay, Lars Kepler, and who's our third?
And Larry McMurtry's Sin Killer.
Oh, let's go, Larry McMurtry.
Okay, yeah, I've never used this book before, so give me a number between 1 and 300.
74.
Okay, and I used to do it where I would make you give me a number, and that was the sentence number. I stopped doing that because you just would get the worst sentences. So now I just kind of scan it. And of course, on page 74, it is one paragraph that is massive. It takes up the entire page.
So Larry McMurtry, not from the James Patterson School of Short Paragraphs. Okay.
Exactly. All right. So I'm going to read this, and you do whatever you want with it. So we just start with a little description. The prairie grass looked so silken, it was like a carpet of needles.
All writing this down. It looks so silken. That's a beautiful image.
It is. That's why he's Larry McMurtry.
Okay. So I give a sentence and then you have
whatever you want. Yeah. Or I can go first. Whatever you want to.
Do you think we should shoot this horse or should we let it go?
It was a ridiculous question, of course. He knew the answer was I would never want to shoot this horse that I had raised. But I knew the reality of the situation. I looked down and then I looked up. A solo buzzard circled overhead.
Damn, Carter. This the bird swooped low and landed a few yards away. I looked at it, it looked at me, and I said, "Sorry, pal, you're not eating today."
A single gunshot took.
So I was going to say, and
yeah.
then, I put my foot in the stirrup, hoisted myself into the saddle, and we rode on toward an uncertain tomorrow. Period. I don't know.
Oh, that's intriguing. I wasn't sure if the horse was going to make it back all the way. Chances were she'd collapse at some point, and I'd have to go through this whole exercise all over again. But she didn't deserve to die in that field, no more so than Amanda had. Although I couldn't have done anything about that.
But I knew somehow I couldn't give up on either of them.
Oh, let's call it there. That's beautiful.
Scene.
Always fun. Always a challenge.
Awesome, man.
It never gets any easier.
It never gets any easier. Thanks for having me on. It was great chatting.
Yeah, congrats on the Boundaries We Cross. That'll be a good election day reading for everybody, and I'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
All right, brother. See you. So that's it. That is my conversation with Brad Parks. His recent book, book number 12, is now out, and it's called The Boundaries We Cross. So make sure to check that out, and go ahead and check out everything about him and his books at bradparksbooks.com. And then hop on over to my website, carterwilson.com, and you can check out my newsletter, my books, my appearances, all that good stuff. And you can also go on over to unboundwriter.com. That's unboundwriter.com. And you can see my coaching offerings, which include one-on-one coaching, writing retreats and seminars, and online classes. And I will say, coming up in March, I am going to be offering a 4-hour writing seminar called Commit to Your Novel. That is going to be in Denver, Colorado. So go to unboundwriter.com and you can check that out. All right, friends, that is it. That is it for today's episode of Making It Up. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I certainly did. New episodes of Making It Up will be out just next week. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching and or listening. Take care.